Tonight, the government shutdown, the Capitol in crisis mode on a day of denunciations by Republicans and Democrats over the budget stalemate. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees furloughed as some of the country's greatest symbols are closed. Dramatic images from around the country. Armies of protesters in the Women's March on the anniversary of President Trump's inauguration. NBC News exclusive. We're inside North Korea. Lester Holt is there in a region consumed by nuclear ambitions and Olympic dreams. The shocking revelation about Tom Petty's death, the cause so tragically familiar to so many families. A major medical advance that could save the lives of thousands of people living with a silent killer. And the new draw of an old form of art, seeing the world through a lens that has withstood the test of time.
This is NBC Nightly News with Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening. Right now as we speak, the United States federal government is shut down. Congress and the White House, after letting a midnight deadline pass, have been unable to find common ground to pass a budget agreement that would fund the work of government employees. The last time this happened, more than 800,000 of the 2.1 million civilians who work for the federal government were ordered to stay home. It's likely come Monday, if a deal isn't reached, the number could be the same. Agencies like Housing and Urban Development and the EPA would lose almost all their staffing. The White House, 62%. Homeland Security, more than 10%. Left untouched, members of Congress, who are the ones who are going to have to find the solution to this problem. Casey Hunt has been chasing them down on Capitol Hill all day. Casey, at this moment, is there any glimmer of any hope?
Well, Jose, we have been waiting all day to figure out the answer to that question. And basically, there have been negotiations going on. It has been minute to minute. Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake, two key Republican senators, have been huddled in Mitch McConnell's office for the last 90 minutes or so. They left to go get some dinner as we wait to see what McConnell's next move might be. There are a couple of options on the table. We have to see what Democrats' strategy is as well. They could potentially go for a shorter term bill that would at least open back up the government's doors. But Democrats really want to see some sort of commitment on immigration for that to happen. And quite frankly, trust has been incredibly low. I talked to Chuck Schumer today, who said he has real questions. And the main question that I'm going to be asking for the next few days or however long we are in this mess is, can you trust any of the commitments you are getting from your fellow negotiators, the Republican leadership in the Senate, in the House, Democrats on both sides, and of course, the President of the United States. So at this hour, we are expecting that negotiations are going to continue into the day tomorrow, which would mean a second day of shutdown after a long Saturday.
The motion is not agreed to.
Early Saturday morning, without an immigration compromise, Senate Democrats said no deal. Republicans firing back.
The government shutdown was 100% avoidable.
Day one of the shutdown, a furious blame game unfolding hour by hour.
You wanted a shutdown. The Trump shutdown is all yours.
This is utter madness.
The solution is to end the foolishness.
Negotiating with this White House is like negotiating with Jell-O. It's next to impossible.
The White House hitting back.
Chuck Schumer actually had the gall to look at the president and said, I'm giving you everything you asked for the wall.
Mick Mulvaney was not in the room. He does not know the truth. I do.
But on Capitol Hill, even some Republicans arguing the White House isn't helping.
Do you think the president is an unreliable negotiator?
I don't think we should be worrying about the president right now.
A bipartisan group of senators holding out hope.
The end game is to resolve this in a bipartisan way.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Huddling through the afternoon to try and find some way out of the stalemate.
You know, I want compromise and consensus.
But as the sun set, Washington was headed for day two of a shutdown.
Do you trust the president as a negotiator?
The president has backed off too many times. It's very, very difficult to sit down and negotiate with him.
Again, that key question of trust, Jose.
Indeed. Casey, thank you very much. I want to bring in NBC's chief White House correspondent, Hallie Jackson. Hallie, what has the White House been doing today?
Yeah, so listen, the president has been in the residence here at the White House for most of the day, Jose, on the phone. I'm told by multiple White House officials he's been calling Mitch McConnell, for example, Paul Ryan, members of his own cabinet like Secretary Mattis at the Pentagon to talk about the agency contingency plans during this government shutdown. His chief of staff, John Kelly, has been on the phone, too. We've also seen the White House really dig in and insist they will not negotiate immigration when it comes to getting the government back open. They won't do it now. They plan to do it later. You've also seen them frame this short-term deal that Casey's talking about as a concession to Democrats. Bottom line, though, we really haven't seen any of the president publicly today, Jose. No meetings here at the White House with congressional leadership, for example. He's just been on the phone and, of course, online doing some tweeting.
Hallie, and just to clear things up, when they're talking about immigration, it's about 800,000 young people who know no other country but the United States, the dreamers.
Absolutely. And what you've seen, though, Jose, is that the White House wants to tie a solution to that, right, for these so-called dreamers, to, for example, border security, a visa lottery program, chain migration as well. They have other issues that they want to tie to what happens to those undocumented people who were brought here when they were younger.
Chain migration, another word for family reunification. Casey, again, the question I asked you at the beginning, any hope of any glimmer in the next days?
I do think, Jose, that there is a growing sense of a grind, a potential defeat, the idea that this is something that looks bad on every member of Congress, no matter what their party. I think the question is, what are Democrats going to be able to say they achieved for this? And I think the dreamers are the key question mark here. This is, of course, why they took such a public stand. And I have to say, you've seen what I think is an important shift in what many people who have been very supportive of dreamers are saying publicly. Some Democrats, including Congressman Luis Gutierrez, saying, build the wall. We don't care how high it is. Just free the dreamers. Help them make sure they can stay with their families. That's a marked shift and a potential opening for President Trump.
Casey Hunt, Hallie Jackson, thank you very much. And as the political drama played out in Washington on the anniversary of the president's inauguration, women across the country took to the streets today, as they did a year ago, to demand equality, justice, and social and political change. The marches took place from coast to coast. A fair number of men were there to support them. NBC's Morgan Radford has been following it all and has our report.
An army of marchers taking over streets in hundreds of cities, calling for change in Washington. Demanding inclusion in Chicago. And fighting for equality in New York.
We're out here because women have decided that they want to take back the conversation, and they insist on being part of it.
Today's march takes place a year after organizers staged one of the largest protests in American history, a day after President Trump's inauguration.
People wanted to run towards something, and they ran towards the Women's March.
Would you have organized this march if President Trump hadn't been elected to office?
We were going to protest regardless of whether it was Hillary or Donald Trump. But of course, Donald Trump just was a line that had to be drawn for all of us, which helped us harness these millions of people across the world.
This year, they say, is about harnessing that momentum and getting women to the polls and into office.
Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like.
Women like Kelly Fowler, who came out today with her daughters.
Last year, I marched. Then I ran. Then I won.
Fowler marched in last year's rally and was so inspired, she decided to run for state office in Virginia and won.
It was the week after the march, and I felt it, and I looked at my husband and I said, I have to run. I said, I have a responsibility.
Now the House delegate for Virginia's 21st district, she joined several other women in the state, holding office for the first time. An inspiration for millions of women, hoping to change the face of politics.
We want everyone to know that when we win, it was women who led us to victory.
In New York City, police estimate that more than 200,000 people took to the streets. Meanwhile, President Trump took to Twitter, saying that today was the perfect day for all women to march, celebrating unprecedented economic success and the lowest female unemployment rate in 18 years. But these marches aren't over, with more scheduled in cities around the world tomorrow. Jose?
Morgan Radford, thank you very much. A situation unfolding in Afghanistan tonight after 4 gunmen attacked the Intercontinental Hotel in Kabul. This is the largest hotel in the capital. Afghan special forces have killed at least one of the attackers. Several people have been injured. There's fear the number of casualties will rise. We turn to North Korea, which is in the middle of a winter warming with the South, less than 3 weeks before the opening of the Olympic Games in Pyeongchang. And tonight, Lester Holt is in North Korea, a country still causing high anxiety over its nuclear program. Lester, good evening.
Jose, good evening from the North Korean capital. How the conversation has changed in the run-up to the Winter Olympics in South Korea, whereas months ago the conversation was about security concerns. Now it's about hope and optimism as North and South Korean officials have had their face-to-face meetings working out the framework of North Korean participation in the Games. We learned today that North Korea will be sending a delegation into the South tomorrow to begin a survey that lay the groundwork for that participation. None of this, of course, is masking the ongoing nuclear tensions. North Korea showing no signs it will roll back its nuclear program, and so far there's been no linkage between that and its participation in the Games. But certainly this has raised some expectations of those who think maybe we are seeing the first hint of a thaw in the heated relations that have gripped this region for so long. Our team is on the ground here. We're reporting that story and getting reaction. We'll have more this week on Nightly News. For now, we'll send it back to you, Jose, in New York.
Lester Holt, thank you so much. And as you just heard from Lester, North Korea will be sending a delegation to South Korea tomorrow to inspect the venues. It comes after today's announcement by the International Olympic Committee officially clearing the way for 22 North Korean athletes to participate next month. They're competing in 5 events, including pairs figure skating, and for the first time in Olympic history, there will be a joint women's ice hockey team made up of North and South Korean players. The two countries will also march together under a unified Korean flag at the opening ceremony, something we've not seen at the Olympics since Torino, about 12 years ago. An update tonight on the death of singer Tom Petty. The cause has now been revealed, and while it comes as a shock, it's become an all too familiar scenario. NBC's Matt Bradley has more tonight.
In the end, this legendary American rocker became another casualty of the opioid crisis sweeping across America. The Los Angeles coroner's office said Tom Petty died from an accidental drug overdose last October. The culprit? A dangerous cocktail of pain medications, including fentanyl, the scourge of the opioid crisis. Like so many, Petty's path to opioid abuse began with chronic pain, his family said in a statement, was simply unbearable and was the cause for his overuse of medication. Despite his suffering, Petty never backed down. In his last months, he continued to tour for his fans, playing through pain, emphysema, knee problems, and most significantly, a fractured hip. The day before he died, doctors told Petty his hip injury had graduated to a full-on break. He was one of about 116 people U.S. health officials say die every day from opioid overdoses. Petty's wife and daughter say the news will spark a healthy and necessary discussion about the opioid crisis and even save lives. A poignant final note from the singer-songwriter after the last song in his final performance. Matt Bradley, NBC News, Los Angeles.
And now to a problem that Britain is confronting head-on that affects millions of people around the world, including many here in the United States, being lonely. The British government is tackling it in a pretty interesting way, appointing a minister for loneliness. From London, Lucy Kafanov has the details.
Ever since her husband passed away, life has gotten hard for Marion Langley. At 84, she says the days are often solitary. Her daughter busy with her own growing family, and few living friends left to turn to.
Hello, is that Trish?
It is. Hi, Marion, it's Silverline here.
Today, a phone call is a lifeline for Marion and millions across Britain. The Silver Line, a charity that's reaching out to the lonely 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Providing a listening ear, showing that they care. Some of the just basic human warmth really goes a long way in dealing with in the callers that we deal with.
Government studies have found that more than 9 million people in the UK often or always feel lonely. About half of those over the age of 75 live alone, and more than 200,000 Britons haven't spoken with a friend or relative in over a month. One study even found that loneliness can hurt your health, increasing mortality the same as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Hi, I'm Tracy.
So pressing is the issue that this week Britain became the first country in the world to appoint a minister for loneliness.
The weather's dreadful up here.
It's a move welcomed by Marion.
Just pick the telephone up and ring. You know, and the satisfaction you get from it's wonderful.
For her, simply hearing a friendly voice on the other end of the line makes the day that much brighter. Lucy Kalfanoff, NBC News, London.
Still ahead tonight, the new technique that could save the lives of thousands who live with what amounts to a ticking time bomb in their bodies. Also, the chaos in the cockpit as a pilot forcibly removed from his plane before takeoff. We're back with health news and a new technique that could help save thousands of lives for people who develop a dangerous condition in the body's main artery. It's a silent killer. Until now, surgically repairing the defect was difficult and often not successful. But as our medical correspondent, Dr. John Torres, reports, the new technique is another example of how treatment is being customized for each patient.
For Gina Berg, joy once meant exotic trips and beach vacations. But last year, the 54-year-old lawyer suffered a heart attack.
Shocked. Absolutely shocked.
What was even more shocking, an unexpected discovery that would put her life on hold altogether. Parts of her aorta, the largest blood vessel in the body, were so swollen they could burst at any moment. A deadly condition called an abdominal aortic aneurysm. Gina had 2 of them. Surgery would be dangerous.
One day would open me up. It would just blow.
Nearly 200,000 Americans have these aneurysms. Problem is, they're almost impossible to treat. Doctors sometimes use a stent to repair the aorta, but in most cases, it doesn't work. The aneurysms are often in places where the stents don't fit. So patients end up living with their own personal ticking time bomb.
Each anatomy of the patient is different, and that's the problem.
But now, doctors at the Mayo Clinic have pioneered a personalized approach to treating what was once a death sentence. They first create customized stents designed for each individual patient. Then, using 3D printing, they build a model of the patient's aorta, so the surgical team can do a practice run of the complex procedure.
This is precision medicine. We're trying to match the ideal stent to the patients.
And it results in better outcomes?
Yes, better outcomes. They are going home earlier and with less complications, less mortality.
Saving lives.
Saving lives.
After having surgery, Gina Berg is now back to enjoying her life.
I feel absolutely terrific. Able to do most things I have not been able to do.
Thanks to a new life-saving treatment with a personal touch.
And so far, doctors at the Mayo Clinic have used this personalized procedure on over 450 patients, and now they're training doctors across the country so more lives can be saved with the high-tech approach to a deadly condition.
This is great news. Dr. Torres, thank you very much. We are back in a moment with a dramatic air rescue at sea. British Airways apologizing tonight for a delay on one of its flights after a pilot was removed from the cockpit, arrested over fears he was drunk. It happened at London's Gatwick Airport just before the Boeing 777 was scheduled to take off on an 11-hour flight to Mauritius. The first officer forcibly removed after flight attendants reportedly smelled alcohol on his breath. They alerted police. In this country, a rescue at sea after an elderly man became sick aboard a cruise ship in New York Harbor. The New York Police Department sent a helicopter after the captain called for help. The man was hoisted up to the helicopter, which rushed him to a hospital. When we come back, how they're seeing the world and drawing new attention to an age-old art. Finally tonight, in an age of selfies, shares, Insta images, there is a movement out there that illustrates our world in a way that has withstood the test of time. And it actually lets people put their hands on what they're seeing. As Kristen Dahlgren reports, all you need is a pen or paintbrush and paper.
In this fast-paced world, many see life through a cell phone camera. But Bill Elkins has a different view.
I used to do photos only, and I'd say, oh, where was that? Where was that?
So he slowed down.
I like to say that I can do a sketch in about the time it takes to drink a cappuccino while it's still mostly warm.
And while you might think of sketching as a solitary pastime, Bill is not at all alone. He started a chapter of urban sketchers in his hometown of Syracuse. He thought he might get a few artists to join him. More than 100 signed up, like Kathy Wayring.
Well, the urban sketcher rule is there is no judgment. You could be a novice and you could be an architectural engineer.
Urban Sketchers clubs are popping up around the world. More than 200 chapters of artists who meet up to sketch and share. James Hobbs is in London.
I'd spent a long time drawing, not really being aware that there were so many other people doing the same thing.
Together, Sketchers captured some of 2017's biggest events: Inauguration Day, the devastation of the California fires, Hurricanes Maria and Irma. Back in Syracuse, they sketched whatever they want: the corner of a building, a cup of coffee.
Selfies?
I don't know if I'd want to go to a cafe and set a mirror up. But we do sketch each other.
Artists around the world, together, drawing attention to some of life's finer details. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, Syracuse, New York.
And that's NBC Nightly News for this Saturday. I'm Jose Diaz-Balart reporting from New York. Tomorrow and early next week, Lester Holt will be reporting from inside North Korea on Nightly News Today and MSNBC. Be sure to tune in. Thank you for the privilege of your time, and good night.